Time has softened these images, but not their stories. Fame fades, whispers remain. Every frame hides something forgotten. This is Velvet Screen's Secrets. Each day, I bring you a new story about Hollywood's golden age and the stars who defined it. It's been 11 long days since the heartbreaking tragedy at the Brentwood mansion, where Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle lost their lives in a way that's still shaking everyone to the core. New pieces of the puzzle keep dropping, and each one feels more chilling than the last. A leaked forensic report has supposedly detailed the exact moment things went down, describing brutal injuries, including a shocking slash that left even investigators speechless. With every update, this story grows darker and harder to process. Sources are now saying the whole nightmare may have started with a fiery argument at Conan O'Brien's Christmas party. Nick was allegedly acting off that night, erratic, unstable, and drawing worried looks from everyone around. After the chaos, he reportedly slipped away without a word, checked into a hotel under a false name, and has since been using his inheritance money to bring in powerhouse defense lawyer Alan Jackson. People can't believe how cold and distant his behavior has become. It's like his conscience vanished overnight.
How would you like to proceed today?
Your Honor, if we could, I would like to ask for a continuance of the arraignment. I want to get it clear at this juncture. It's too early. We've coordinated with counsel from the DA's office, and January 7th, with the court's permission, would be a convenient date for us to come back for potential arraignment.
Investigators say the chain of events began over that tense dinner, a key detail that helped them finally map out the haunting timeline of what happened inside the Reiner home. According to the Los Angeles County District Attorney, the shocking events unfolded sometime between midnight and the early morning hours. Between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m., Nick allegedly stepped out of his room and into the main house, where his parents were asleep, completely unaware of the nightmare about to unfold. There were no signs of forced entry, since Nick already had keys and knew every corner of that home by heart. After everything went down, he left the house, some say in panic, others think with a chilling calmness only he could explain. Around 4 a.m., security footage reportedly shows Nick arriving at the Pierside Hotel in Santa Monica, roughly 20 minutes away from Brentwood. He checked in like nothing had happened, calm, collected, and completely unnoticed by the hotel staff. What's even more haunting is that during those early morning hours, he didn't seem to make any calls, text anyone, or even sleep. It's like he was drifting between panic and denial, using that hotel room as nothing more than a hiding spot. Hours later, around 3:40 p.m., the nightmare finally came to light. A massage therapist showed up at the Reiner home for her scheduled appointment with Rob and Michelle, but no one came to the door. Concerned, she reached out to Roy, who arrived with her boyfriend to check things out. When they finally opened the door, they made a gut-wrenching discovery. Rob inside, unresponsive. They immediately dialed 911 in shock and disbelief. While officers and family faced the devastating scene, Nick was nowhere to be found. He stayed missing for several tense hours until around 9 p.m., leaving investigators and the entire community reeling with unanswered questions. Security footage from an Arco gas station near Exposition Park, close to USC, caught a chilling moment. Nick calmly buying a sports drink just before everything came crashing down. He looked anxious, his eyes darting around like he was expecting someone to recognize him, yet he still managed to keep his composure long enough to pay and walk out. Just minutes later, around 9:15 p.m., LAPD officers working alongside the U.S. Marshals closed in fast, surrounding and arresting him right there near the station. Nick didn't fight back, didn't speak, didn't even flinch. Witnesses say he just stood still as officers cuffed him, wearing a blank, hollow stare that sent chills down everyone's spine. Photos later showed his face drained, exhausted and completely emotionless. Meanwhile, forensic experts analyzed the timeline based on body temperature and other details, estimating that Rob and Michelle had already been gone for 3 to 4 hours before first responders arrived at the scene. Investigators now suspect Nick might have tried to clean himself up before running. They believe he either wiped down at the house or showered once he reached the hotel, trying to wash away what happened. Even so, tiny traces could still be found on his clothes, on the hotel towels, even caught on nearby surveillance cameras in Santa Monica. Experts think the weapon may have been something simple yet deadly, a kitchen knife from inside the home, something within easy reach. His deep familiarity with the place might have given him an eerie level of precision during the chaos. Reports describe the inside of the house as a total wreck, showing just how violent and chaotic that night became. At first, people thought there was just one wound, but the forensic team later confirmed multiple severe injuries, painting a picture far darker than anyone expected. Professor Joseph Scott Morgan, a top forensic expert from Jacksonville State University and host of Body Bags, broke it down in chilling detail. He explained that the number of injuries alone shows clear intent and an unbelievable amount of effort. It wasn't random or impulsive. This was controlled, forceful, and brutally calculated. Using a sharp object at such close range is one of the most personal and deliberate forms of harm, demanding strength, precision, and shocking determination. Professor Morgan mentioned that forensic specialists sometimes use the word overkill to describe attacks this intense, but in this case, it's even more complicated. The wounds weren't just random cuts, they told a story. Some were long and shallow, others deep and targeted, evidence that this wasn't a single burst of rage, but a string of deliberate, sustained actions. Every motion looked intentional, as if carried out with disturbing focus. He went on to explain that causing wounds this deep isn't something that happens quickly or easily. It takes control, pressure, and repeated force, meaning whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing and didn't stop until they were done. The level of violence inside the Reiner home paints a horrifying picture of that night's intensity. These findings have left investigators, friends, and fans completely heartbroken. The final moments of Rob and Michelle Reiner weren't just tragic, they were painfully deliberate, leaving behind an image so haunting it continues to shake everyone following this case.
What makes this tragedy even more disturbing are early reports suggesting that Rob and Michelle may have been in bed when it all happened. If that's true, it means the person behind it had an intimate understanding of their home, every hallway, every creak in the floor, every locked door. They knew the couple's routines, their bedtime habits, even how deeply they slept. That level of familiarity paints a deeply unsettling picture. Getting that close means total invasion, walking straight up to the bed where someone should have been safest. Just imagining that moment sends chills down the spine. The room itself reportedly showed signs of a violent struggle, evidence scattered across the space alongside multiple injuries that told a story of chaos and pain. Each action seemed to weaken the victims more and more until everything ended in tragedy. All clues still point toward one person, Nick Reiner, the only other individual who lived inside that house and could move around freely without setting off any alarms or suspicion.
I just have a couple of quick words. First of all, and most importantly, this is a devastating tragedy that has befallen the Reiner family. We all recognize that. Our hearts go out to the entire Reiner family. There are very, very complex and serious issues that are associated with this case.
Now, the man accused of turning his own home into a crime scene is said to be using his inheritance money to pay for one of the country's most powerful defense lawyers. People everywhere are asking, how much is this defense even costing? Alan Jackson isn't just some regular attorney, he's a heavyweight in criminal law, known across the United States for taking on high-profile, impossible-to-win cases. The fact that Nick hired him only adds another shocking twist to this already unbelievable story.
Alan Jackson, one of the biggest names in criminal defense, is known for taking on only the toughest, most high-stakes cases in the country. And now he's representing someone who doesn't even have a clear career path, Nick Reiner, a man who's relied mostly on family money and once worked with his father on a small film project back in 2016. Jackson's reputation for handling massive, headline-making cases comes with a price tag that's just as staggering. In a past case, Jackson reportedly lowered his fees for client Karen Reed, yet her legal costs still soared close to $10 million. In Nick's situation, insiders believe the number could climb even higher thanks to the brutal charges and non-stop media attention. Even with a discount, the cost is way beyond what most people could ever afford. When reporters caught up with Jackson outside the courthouse, he refused to give details, simply saying, "I cannot comment on who was paying the fees." That one line sent the public into a frenzy. Speculation exploded online. Some people think Jackson might be working pro bono, while others whisper about secret financial deals or hidden trusts. But on December 18, 2025, a bombshell dropped. Sources close to the Reiner family revealed that the legal fees are actually being paid from Rob and Michelle Reiner's estate, an estate reportedly worth around $200 million. According to those close to the family, surviving relatives like Jake and ROI Reiner made the painful decision to cover Nick's legal costs despite their grief and outrage. They're pushing for a defense that argues mental illness and diminished responsibility rather than outright criminal intent. Their goal? To have Nick committed to a secure psychiatric facility instead of facing decades in prison. They believe that even after all this pain, a humane outcome is still possible, though it's left many torn about what true justice should look like. Some close to the Reiner family believe this might even be what Rob and Michelle would have wanted for their son, to make sure he receives help instead of total destruction. Under California law, if Nick is convicted, he'll automatically lose his right to inherit anything from his parents' estate. But until a verdict is reached, the law doesn't stop other family members or estate executors from using part of that estate to fund his legal defense. Independent legal experts like Sean Wace and Bart have confirmed that this move is technically legal for now, given the stage of the trial. Still, not everyone agrees. It sparked a heated debate. Some argue that the estate's executor could have refused to approve those payments, claiming it poses both financial and moral risks. And since the family and court haven't officially confirmed the source of the money, the rumors just keep swirling, adding even more intrigue to this already intense case. Meanwhile, Nick Reiner's legal situation has taken a darker turn. He's facing 2 counts of first-degree charges with aggravating circumstances because there were multiple victims. Nick is currently locked up in the Los Angeles County Jail, and he's already made his first court appearance. Witnesses described him wearing the standard blue suit issued to defendants, a look that's both a safety measure and a symbol of how far he's fallen from his once privileged life. Representing him, of course, is powerhouse defense attorney Alan Jackson, the same man known for pulling off unbelievable courtroom victories in high-profile cases.
So with that, we are set for January 7th for an arraignment. That's the next court date, and that's all I have to say at this point. There may be more at some other point, but today we're going to rest on where we stand procedurally, which is this was a continuance of an arraignment. Nothing happened today substantively. We'll be back for an arraignment in the same department on the 7th of January. We'll see you then.
During the hearing, the judge made a bold move, banning all live cameras, which only cranked up the mystery and tension around the trial. Jackson reportedly asked the court for a postponement of the formal arraignment, saying Nick needed more time to decide his next move. The courtroom atmosphere was thick with unease, every eye on the man at the center of one of California's most shocking cases. The decision on whether Nick would enter a plea was left hanging in the air. The judge granted Alan Jackson's request to delay the arraignment, pushing the next hearing to January 7, 2026, a date that's now burned into everyone following this chilling case. The silence in the courtroom was heavy, until the judge finally addressed him directly. "Mr. Reiner, do you waive your right to a speedy trial so that the arraignment may be continued to January 7, 2026? Nick looked up just once and quietly answered, "Yes, Your Honor." No emotion, no explanation, just an empty, cold response that froze the entire courtroom for a second. The hearing ended so abruptly that even the reporter sitting in the front row seemed caught off guard. January 7th now stands as a crucial moment, a day that could decide the next chapter in this haunting tragedy. While the grief surrounding the Reiner family continues to weigh on everyone, the short and emotionless hearing only reminded the public of one undeniable truth: the case is far from over. All eyes are now locked on what will unfold in court next, where justice and heartbreak are set to collide again. Before diving into the next phase of the trial, investigators took a hard look back at the key moments leading up to that horrifying night. It all traces back to the tense holiday gathering on December 13th at Conan O'Brien's house, a night that may have lit the fuse for everything that followed.
But to understand the full picture, you have to look at Nick Reiner's painful history. His long, public battle with addiction has been no secret, and it's impossible to ignore how it may have played a role in this tragedy. Born in 1993, Nick's struggles began young, around age 15, when he reportedly first experimented with heroin and cocaine. Those substances dragged him into a dark spiral that would haunt him for years. As the son of acclaimed director Rob Reiner and grandson of legendary Carl Reiner, Nick grew up in the shadow of Hollywood royalty. The fame, the expectations, the constant spotlight. It was a world he never asked for and never seemed prepared to handle. From early on, his family saw the warning signs and knew he was fighting a battle far deeper than anyone outside could understand. Rob and Michelle first sent Nick to rehab while he was still underage, desperately hoping it would save him. But that was only the beginning of a painful, never-ending cycle. He went in and out of treatment centers over and over again, 17 or 18 times in just a few years, according to what Nick later admitted himself. Each time, he'd get clean just long enough to make it back home, only to relapse again, falling right back into that same dark loop that felt impossible to escape. His parents, especially Rob, refused to give up on him. They poured everything they had, emotionally, financially, and even professionally, into helping him get back on his feet. They gave him second chances, offered job opportunities, and let him move back into their Brentwood home so he could try to rebuild his life. Rob once said, "Being a parent means never giving up on your children, no matter what they do." That quote feels haunting now, considering how everything ended. The same son they loved and fought for eventually became tied to the tragedy that destroyed their family. It's heartbreaking beyond words. When Rob and Michelle finally tried a tougher approach, what they called tough love, Nick couldn't handle it. He packed up and disappeared, choosing to live life on his own terms, even if that meant losing everything. He drifted through states like Maine, New Jersey, and Texas, surviving on the streets, often with nowhere to sleep and no one to turn to. Nick later described that time as the bleakest period of my life, when every day was a fight just to stay alive. He relied completely on substances and risky street connections to get by, scraping through one dangerous situation after another. Then, in 2015, it seemed like there might finally be a light at the end of the tunnel. At just 22 years old, Nick found a moment of stability and even worked with his father on the film Being Charlie, a semi-autobiographical story inspired by his battle with addiction. For a brief moment, it looked like redemption was possible. But now, in hindsight, that glimmer of hope feels more like the calm before the storm. During this short-lived calm, Nick had moved back in with his parents in Los Angeles, and working on Being Charlie actually helped heal some of the deep wounds that had divided the family for years. For a moment, things seemed to be turning around, but sadly, that peace didn't last long. By 2018, Nick confessed to falling back into heavy drug use, this time involving heroin again, and a terrifying, near-fatal incident with cocaine while on a flight. Not long after, things spiraled out of control.
In a haze of addiction, Nick reportedly destroyed his parents' guest house, smashing furniture, breaking electronics, and leaving behind chaos that mirrored his mental state. That was the breaking point. Rob and Michelle had no choice but to send him back to rehab yet again, hoping this time would be different. Around 2020, after years of setbacks and treatment, they gave him one more chance, allowing him to move back into the main Brentwood home. It was a decision rooted in love and fear, an effort to help and monitor him closely as his behavior became more unpredictable. Friends say Rob and Michelle were deeply worried about Nick's mental health and substance abuse in the months before everything came crashing down. His story stands as a devastating reminder that even with endless love, money, and care, some battles are heartbreakingly beyond a parent's control. Now, all eyes are shifting toward the upcoming trial, especially because Nick's defense attorney is none other than Alan Jackson, one of the biggest names in criminal defense. The question everyone keeps asking is, how did Nick manage to land such a powerhouse lawyer? Even more intriguing is what strategy Jackson might use to defend him. According to new reports from LAPD sources, witnesses at the Santa Monica Hotel saw Nick after the incident and described him as looking heavily under the influence. That detail could become a major turning point in the case. Could Jackson be building a defense around Nick's impaired mental state of mind? It's a question that could completely change how the courtroom sees what happened that night. The claim that Nick was heavily under the influence might connect to his long history of substance abuse, but it doesn't automatically mean legal insanity. At best, it could raise questions about whether he was fully in control of his actions at that exact moment. But under California law, drug use alone rarely serves as a valid legal defense. The court usually views it as a personal choice, not an excuse, unless there's undeniable proof of a severe psychological break. Substance use can influence how prosecutors assess intent, especially in first-degree cases where premeditation matters. But in a situation like this, where the suspect reportedly left a heated argument, retrieved an object, and returned, those actions clearly suggest planning and intent. Trying to argue drug addiction or diminished mental capacity would be an uphill battle for Nick's legal team, no matter how skillful Alan Jackson might be. Investigators believe Rob and Michelle were attacked with a knife, though it's still unclear whether Nick brought it from somewhere else or grabbed one already inside the home. The signs of an earlier argument, along with the type of injuries, hint at a level of preparation that's hard to ignore. Even if substance use played a role, it would likely hold little weight in court under California law, where intent and sequence of actions matter most.
If convicted of first-degree charges with special circumstances, Nick could be facing the harshest penalties possible, life in prison without the possibility of parole. Sentences for crimes like this start at 25 years and can extend to life, depending on what the court decides. There's been no sign of self-defense, no evidence of an accident. This tragedy appears deeply personal, what many experts are now calling a devastating act of passion. This entire case has blown up even bigger because Rob and Michelle Reiner weren't just any couple. They were beloved Hollywood icons. Their legacy alone has turned this tragedy into a national obsession. The list of potential witnesses sounds like a red carpet lineup. Conan O'Brien, Larry David, Billy Crystal, and others close to the Reiner family could all be called to testify. Their emotional words could turn that courtroom into something straight out of a Hollywood drama, raw, heartbreaking, and impossible to look away from. The trial is expected to begin sometime in late 2026 or early 2027, and insiders believe a plea deal is highly unlikely. Prosecutor Nathan Hochman is gearing up to build his case around hard physical evidence and a powerful emotional narrative, pushing this trial into the ranks of America's most high-profile courtroom battles since the O.J. Simpson or Menendez brothers cases. Every detail, from Nick's addiction struggles to his mental state and the sheer brutality of the crime, will be dissected under a microscope.
New forensic reports have reportedly linked Nick directly to the scene through video footage, DNA samples, and other trace evidence, leaving almost no room for doubt. That kind of evidence makes any argument of self-defense nearly impossible to sustain. The public's reaction has been a mix of sorrow and disbelief. How could something this dark happen within one of Hollywood's most respected families? Rob and Michelle were both older, and Nick, only 32 years old, was supposed to be the one they were still protecting, not the one accused of ending their lives. Legal experts say there's no realistic way to argue that his mental condition completely absolves him of responsibility. Manslaughter defenses usually depend on a lack of intent, but here, the evidence of preparation is overwhelming. The argument with his parents, the retrieval of the weapon, and the sequence of events all point to one chilling reality: this was planned. Early reports suggest that Nick approached his parents from behind, a chilling detail that paints a picture of intent and calculation. That single piece of information alone adds major weight to the prosecution's claim that the act was premeditated, not something done in a sudden burst of emotion. This puts enormous pressure on his defense team, leaving Alan Jackson, one of the most skilled attorneys in the business, facing an uphill battle like never before. The exact positions of Rob and Michelle's bodies inside the mansion haven't been revealed yet, but investigators say the home's security system and surveillance footage might have captured key moments from that night. Those recordings could end up being the most powerful evidence in court, possibly confirming how and when everything unfolded. Every tiny detail, every second of that footage could make or break the defense once the trial officially begins. And when you step back and look at Nick Reiner himself, the story gets even more complex. Here's a man who grew up surrounded by extreme privilege, yet battled deep addiction that cut through all that wealth. It's a contrast that will weigh heavily on the jury, especially one drawn from Los Angeles County, where not everyone comes from fame or fortune. How will they see a man who seemed to have everything but still spiraled so far out of control? Will they see him as a victim of his own demons, or as someone who used privilege as a shield from consequences? That question could define the tone of this entire trial. As we move forward, we turn back to the night that set everything in motion, the night of Saturday, December 13th, 2025. Conan O'Brien's home in West Los Angeles shimmered with holiday lights and the sound of laughter from some of Hollywood's biggest names. But beneath that glitter and glab, tension was brewing, and no one there could have imagined the darkness that would follow just hours later. Conan O'Brien's annual Christmas bash was one of those legendary Hollywood events where A-listers could finally let their guard down, sip champagne, and talk freely without flashing cameras or headlines waiting outside. As usual, Rob and Michelle Reiner showed up looking radiant and relaxed, but this year they brought someone new into the mix, their younger son, Nick Reiner. What seemed like a simple family outing later turned out to be a heartbreaking decision driven by pure concern. Rob and Michelle reportedly didn't want to leave Nick home alone. In the months leading up to that night, his behavior had become increasingly unstable, his old addictions creeping back, late-night wandering that left their parents terrified, and calls in the middle of the night that filled the house with worry. They thought bringing him to the party might keep things calm, surround him with laughter, friends, and good energy. Maybe, just maybe, it would help. Nick wasn't on the official guest list, but Rob texted Conan personally, and the ever-gracious host replied right away, welcoming them all without hesitation. When the Reiners arrived, things appeared normal at first. Rob gave Conan a warm hug, thanking him for the invite, while Michelle turned heads in a stunning dark dress that perfectly captured her elegance. But Nick stood apart, quiet, withdrawn, wearing a faded gray hoodie with the hood pulled up, looking completely out of place among the polished crowd. While guests laughed and mingled, Nick lingered near the wall, his eyes darting around the room like he was searching for someone or something that only he could see. His anxious energy stood out immediately. Within minutes, people began to whisper as his strange behavior drew attention. Nick started walking up to random guests, asking odd, disjointed questions that left many visibly uneasy. What began as a festive night was slowly taking on an edge of tension no one could explain, an energy that hinted something was deeply wrong beneath the sparkle and cheer. "What's your name? Your full name? Are you famous?" Nick asked, his voice eerily flat, but his stare sharp enough to make people freeze. His eyes didn't blink, his face didn't move. It was like he was studying every answer for some hidden meaning. Most guests smiled awkwardly, gave short replies, and tried to slip away without making a scene. Others quietly whispered that something about him felt off.
Actress Jane Fonda later described the moment vividly, saying she felt a chill run straight down my spine when Nick stood too close, locking eyes with her in total silence. But the most unsettling encounter of the night came when Nick crossed paths with Bill Hader. Out of nowhere, Nick cut into Hader's private conversation and started repeating the same strange questions over and over, like a broken record. Hader, trying to keep things calm, politely said he was in the middle of a personal talk, but Nick didn't budge. He just stood there, frozen, staring straight at him before suddenly turning on his heel and storming off, his face tight with anger. The air around them went cold, and several people nearby watched in stunned silence, unsure of what to say or do next. That moment changed the whole vibe of the party. What had started as a night of joy and laughter had shifted into something tense and uneasy. Guests later recalled that the glamorous Hollywood energy had been replaced with something darker, a heavy, unshakable feeling that something terrible was brewing beneath the surface. Seeing it unfold, Rob Reiner knew things were slipping fast. He pulled Nick aside into a quiet hallway, trying to calm him down, but his voice rose quickly as frustration took over. The argument grew heated, echoing through the house so loudly that people in nearby rooms could hear it clearly. Witnesses said Rob scolded his son for making people uncomfortable and urged him to get control of himself. But by then, the night had already spiraled into something no one would ever forget. Michelle stood close by, torn between calming her husband and trying to steady her son, her voice soft but full of worry. Rob's tone grew firm, while Nick's replies turned sharper and louder, each word cutting through the party's background music. Witnesses said the tension was thick. No one dared interrupt as father and son clashed in the middle of what had been a joyful night. The heated argument went on for several minutes, casting a heavy cloud over the entire celebration. Finally, Rob and Michelle decided they'd had enough. Without another word, they made their way toward the exit, their faces tight with pain and exhaustion. One guest later recalled seeing the couple glance back at Nick before walking out, eyes full of heartbreak, almost as if saying, "We love you no matter what, but we have to go." That image stuck in everyone's mind, a silent goodbye that would soon take on a devastating meaning. Nick didn't leave with them. He stayed behind, standing alone in the corner with an expression no one could read, his face dark, his mood unreadable. The party's energy never recovered after that. Laughter quieted, conversations faded, and a sense of unease hung in the air. Those who noticed Nick's withdrawn, brooding presence said they felt something heavy in the atmosphere, like a storm waiting to break. No one there could have imagined how real that storm would soon become. Just a few hours later, tragedy struck inside the Reiner family's Brentwood home, turning what was once a safe haven into a scene of heartbreak and disbelief. Every new piece of evidence since then has painted a story soaked in sorrow, from the late-night timeline to the arrest that followed. That house, once filled with love, laughter, and endless efforts to help Nick rebuild his life, now stands as a haunting reminder of everything lost. What was once a symbol of family and hope has become a painful memory, etched forever in the hearts of those who knew Rob and Michelle Reiner, and the world that's still struggling to understand how it all went so tragically wrong. The Reiner family story remains one of Hollywood's most heartbreaking and haunting tragedies. What once was a home filled with laughter, warmth, and unconditional love has now become a painful memory,
a reminder of how even the brightest lives can be touched by darkness. Rob and Michelle Reiner devoted everything to helping their son find peace, and their loss has left an empty space that can never truly be filled. Their legacy, though, continues to live on through the lives they touched, the art they created, and the kindness they showed to everyone who knew them. As the world watches this case unfold, it's important to remember the real heart of this story: a family who loved deeply, who tried endlessly, and who faced pain no parent should ever endure. Our thoughts and condolences go out to the Reiner family, their friends, and all those grieving during this difficult time. May they find strength, peace, and healing in the days to come. And since today is December 25th, let's take a moment to hold our loved ones a little closer and remember what truly matters: compassion, forgiveness, and love. Wishing everyone a warm and gentle Merry Christmas wherever you are. May this season bring comfort to broken hearts and light to dark places. If you've been following this story and want to continue supporting our work, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your engagement helps us bring more real stories to light and honor the truth behind them. Stay safe, stay kind, and remember, life is fragile and love is everything. Merry Christmas to all, and may Rob and Michelle Reiner's memory continue to inspire empathy, strength, and understanding in every one of us.